So before I get to this review of last night's Monday Night Raw, the video package they showed what the Wyatt family was so creepy and well done and eerie, it almost gave me nightmares. Hey, what's up and how's it going, everyone? Well, I'm so glad that you have took your time to spend with me right here today on the MRB Wrestling Review Show. I am your co-host Mike Big Rock Wilson, and last night was WWE Monday Night Raw from Cleveland, Ohio. And the show kicked off last night when the WWE COO Triple H came out and stripped Daniel Bryan of the WWE Championship after Daniel Bryan won last night the night before at Night of Champions. And with that being said, eventually the audience is gonna, tune out to see Daniel Bryan being stripped of the title, and I hope this is the last time that this happens because, it's just going to go stale eventually, so I hope that the third time will be the charm. Daniel Bryan's big payoff being the third time he wins the WWE Championship, and just leave it at that. And the also interesting thing is that this should, I think, can be dragged out for another few months because the way this is going, this whole story with Daniel Bryan and against the corporation, week after week is very, very interesting to say the least. And with this whole thing with the fast count with the referee Scott Armstrong, makes you believe that he is in cahoots with someone. And I think, in my opinion, I think there's something going on with the ref and Vince McMahon, not Daniel Bryan, because they teased that when Scott Armstrong said they caught us. So, they kind of planted the seed of, Daniel Bryan in cahoots with Scott Armstrong, with the referee, Scott Armstrong. So that may not be the case. And with that being said, you have, the referee is in cahoots with Triple H, because, Triple H is trying to cover his side of the story, when it comes to, the main event of Night of Champions being coming off as a screw job. And in the same time, it wouldn't make sense because later on in the show, we see Triple H, pretty much giving the boot to the refs. So even though it seems obvious for Triple H to be in cahoots with Scott Armstrong, I think someone is. That someone will probably be Vince McMahon. I think Vince will be the one to probably speak out for Triple H's power struggle. And before the night was over, speaking of, making statements, the way the crowd reacted was absolutely amazing, and I will get to that later on. And with that whole thing, with the first segment with Daniel Bryan finally winning the championship, and you go back to Night of Champions, and you see the crowd's reaction, and it almost feels like that they questioned, they're beside themselves as to what happened with that fast count. So it don't feel like a big payoff for Daniel Bryan. And on last night's show on Monday Night Raw, it was obvious. Yeah, I seen it coming from a mile away when Triple H stripped Daniel Bryan with the WWE Championship. And the only thing I didn't like about, the entire Raw episode was that there's no conclusion as to see what's going to happen with the WWE Championship. And with that being said, hopefully next week we'll see some sort of resolvement as to see who's going to be involved in the WWE Championship match upcoming for the next pay-per-view, which is coming up 3 weeks from now. It's called Battleground. It's a new pay-per-view event for the WWE, and I think by that time we'll have a new WWE champion. Also last night, Dolph Ziggler defeated the United States champion Dean Ambrose, and even though I think Dolph Ziggler is in the wrong place on the show, he should be, like I said before, competing for the WWE champion, for the World Heavyweight Champion, or at least be involved in the main title picture. I think that match was actually pretty good, and it's kind of foreshadowing a rubber match between Ziggler and Ambrose for the United States Championship. And what I really liked about that match last night was, after the match, when you see that look on Dean Ambrose's face, that Twilight Zone look, that shot alone was worth the money, and I think Dean Ambrose sells really, really well when he's involved in any singles match, because it shows his true talent in the ring, as opposed to Dean Ambrose being in a tag team match. So for that reason, I think Ambrose and Ziggler put on a great show last night on Monday Night Raw. Also, we see Fandango defeating R-Truth, and at this point, I really don't care about Fandango winning over R-Truth, because it's not an impressive win. Even though it is a win, it don't feel like that Fandango is on the right track, because he defeated a jobber, so to speak. So I think Fandango should be involved in matches where he could benefit from and have a title run in the future, or have some sort of story rivalry when it comes to him and his dancing and Summer Rae. Hopefully something may happen if Chris Jericho does come back. I think the way those two work well with each other, and I think they could play on that again, and I really don't mind. And for that reason, I think Fandango needs to be involved in something when it comes to, wrestling and storytelling. And for that reason, it feels like he is in limbo right now. And there's actually some superstars that feel that way, like The Miz, which I will get to later on. Also last night, we see Stephanie McMahon giving a business proposal to Dusty Rhodes, and it was interesting because Stephanie McMahon last night was absolutely amazing, coming off as this really cold-hearted, evil woman who just makes you wanna choke the life out of her, because she is such an evil person. And for that reason, Stephanie McMahon cannot go do no wrong. And the way that segment was done was extremely well, and even though I'm not a fan of The Big Show crying, I like the situation he was in with Dusty Rhodes. And here's also the interesting thing, and I have this analogy in my head, is that, the Shield are known to be known as hounds. And here's where it gets interesting. We see the Shield surround Dusty Rhodes with steel chairs, chopping at the bit, waiting, for the owner to give them the orders to attack Dusty Rhodes. And you have this, big, giant bear in the Big Show who, is being told what to do to take out, the sacrificial lamb, that person being Dusty Rhodes. And before all this happened, we see the passion from Dusty Rhodes' promo, talking about his sons, and really getting personal when Stephanie McMahon mentioned going by his real name, Virgil Runnels, or something along those lines. And it just really, it was a really passionate promo. And what happened was that you have the hounds chopping at the bit, the owner, being Stephanie McMahon, getting them to attack, the sacrificial lamb being Dusty Rhodes, and you have the big, huge, giant bear, the Big Show, who doesn't want to do what he's been told, but has to do it anyway. And the way it was done, he punched Dusty Rhodes, and then before he dropped, he caught him. to let him drop easily. And I think what was great out of that was the emotion from the Big Show, as opposed to Big Show crying for Daniel Bryan. But in this case, it's Dusty Rhodes, and it works because Dusty Rhodes is a legend. He's a Hall of Famer, and it seems like the Big Show has a lot of respect for Dusty Rhodes. So I think the emotions from the Big Show last night played really well as everyone else in that segment alone. Stephanie McMahon, like I said before, incredible as a villain. And the also interesting thing is that, when you see Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, together in a segment, it seems like Stephanie McMahon is the dominant of the two, but when they're separate, Triple H is very comfortable in his role as a heel villain, as, the owner of the company. So with that being said, it almost seems like Stephanie McMahon is, the one running the organization, the corporation. And with all that being said, I think that Triple H, even though he's playing two sides of the fence here, at Night of Champs playing this, for some reason, the babyface, and now going back to being a heel again, stripping Daniel Bryan of the championship, there's something seems to be going on, and I think that, something has to give with Triple H. If he's acting as a babyface one night and acting as a heel another night, something has to give, and I think hopefully it's sooner rather than later. Also last night, the Brie Bellas and the Funkadactyls defeated Layla, Alicia Fox, and Aksana. And the only thing I didn't like was that, the commentary booth kind of took away from that match, because I was more interested in AJ Lee and Natalya going at it. And, with the whole microphone not working, kind of added to that element. And with that being said, I think that I'm more interested in this thing with AJ Lee and Natalya, because with all due respect to everyone else in that match, Natalya is the better of pretty much everyone who was in that ring at that point in time. And with that being said, here's AJ. She's on top. She's the face of the Divas division, and everyone else is down here. And I think what needs to happen is for, someone or two or three, guys from the Total Divas or people like Jerry the King Lawler to get involved in this thing with the Divas to hopefully boost, their career. And I think something needs to give, because that segment with the Six Divas match really didn't do anything for me. And really what happened was it kind of fell flat. And for that reason, AJ Lee is the only one that's pretty much holding the fort for the Divas division. So something has to give with the Divas. Push Naomi if you have to. Make her up her way to becoming the Divas champ, or at least have Natalya. So I think that, the Divas on that show kind of just didn't do anything for the show. It was probably one of the worst segments that happened on Monday Night Raw. Also last night, we see Rob Van Dam defeat Damien Sandow in a one-on-one match, and with Damien Sandow holding the Money in the Bank briefcase, again, it's another loss. I don't like it. I wish that Damien Sandow would just stop this streak of losing matches, because he is the Money in the Bank holder, and there's going to be a point in time where Damien Sandow is going to cash in and become the world champ and come out as nobody cares. So I think Damien Sandow needs momentum, and I think putting Rob Van Dam in that situation was not the right way to go, because Damien Sandow needs momentum going into catching him in his briefcase. And putting Rob Van Dam in this situation, like I said, not the smartest thing to do. And I think what really came out of that was for Rob Van Dam to go over someone who's still involved in the World Championship picture with Alberto Del Rio. Also last night, we see The Miz versus Randy Orton, and it went to a no contest. But what I really like throughout that entire segment in that match was The Miz's mom really playing the emotions, covering her face, really selling that whole thing where The Miz gets beaten up by Randy Orton. And before the match, we see Stephanie McMahon telling Randy Orton to become that old Viper again, and mentioning the handcuffing Triple H and kissing Stephanie McMahon, being that sick, twisted Viper that he used to be, should come back. And what happened was we kind of got a rejuvenated Randy Orton. It wasn't the Randy Orton that Stephanie McMahon mentioned, but it was a Randy Orton who came off excellent as really hearing voices in his head in a different kind of way. And I think that the voices are coming back, and hopefully this plays out sooner rather than later for Randy Orton, because let's face it, he's going to be the guy that's going to be involved in the WWE Championship picture, and he has to look strong going into whatever match he's going to be involved in at Battleground in 3 weeks. And the only thing I kind of didn't like about, that entire thing with The Miz and Randy Orton and the mom selling the emotions was The Miz's father, because it felt like, The Miz's father never really sold any emotions when it came to not just The Miz beating up, but, his wife was there, right beside him. And I didn't see, The Miz's father, tending to his wife, saying it's going to be okay. It was like he was there, standing there, watching his kid in a football game and saying, "Oh, get up, it's fine, shake it off." So with that being said, that was the only thing I'm kind of nitpicking on that whole thing with Randy Orton and The Miz. But overall, I think, Randy Orton last night and The Miz actually turned out pretty well. Also last night, Ryback and Paul Heyman addressed the WWE Universe, and it was probably one of the most interesting and awkward moments I have seen in a very long time involving Paul Heyman and especially Ryback. And here's the interesting thing. Ryback right now, I think, actually looked pretty good, even though I think he should stop talking. I like how he mentioned is that if there's one thing I can't stand is a bully, and he's a bully himself, so little things like that actually played out pretty well. And with Paul Heyman giving him Ryback that kiss on the cheek was like absolutely awkward. And what was more awkward was the way Paul Heyman was staring at Ryback throughout that entire time in that segment. It was like a child staring at his puppy, first getting a puppy. It was really, really awkward. It was like Ryback was holding back laughter and trying to be in his Ryback zone. And it was so weird to watch Paul Heyman do all these little things to make that entire segment so uncomfortable, and yet so genius of Paul Heyman. And the way he pulls off his awkwardness and his uncomfortableness was absolutely brilliant. Nothing really Paul Heyman can go wrong. Paul Heyman is a guy who is absolutely a genius, and when he does something really awkward and uncomfortable, it almost makes you want to not watch but peek, because it's, really drawing your eye. And you almost want to look away but still peek. So Paul Heyman, absolutely a genius when it comes to really uncomfortable moments and awkward moments. And nothing bad I have to say about Paul Heyman. Honest to God. Also last night, we see the Usos defeat Tons of Funk and the Real Americans to become #1 contenders to the WWE Tag Team Champs. And the funny thing was, this felt like a match that was being thrown in the last second, and I was hoping for, some sort of weak tournament, but what made up for that was, the last few minutes of the match when Jimmy Uso made the hot tag. In the last few minutes, the Usos were on fire. And for that reason, I think the Usos last night really showed their talent as a tag team. And I think that them now being #1 contenders to the Shield's Tag Team Championships also plays in to the story of this power trip with Triple H. And I will get to that shortly because the main event last night was Daniel Bryan defeating the WWE Tag Team Champion Roman Reigns in a singles match via disqualification. And what I like about this was that we finally get to see Roman Reigns in a one-on-one confrontation with Daniel Bryan. And the build-up was there because we see Daniel Bryan competing in matches with Seth Rollins and then Dean Ambrose and then Roman Reigns, the bigger guy of the three. And what was really, really amazing was that we see Roman Reigns in an excellent match he pulled off last night. And for that reason, hey, why not have him in a singles career long after the Shield is over? He will, I think, will be the sleeper of the three. I think that Roman Reigns last night was incredible, and what's also interesting is that out of the three guys, the Shield, Roman Reigns was always the one in question, because we see Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns in singles competition showing their talents. And when you see Roman Reigns in six-man action and tag team action, it's almost like you see his potential as a singles competitor, but not fully. And we finally got to see that last night on Monday Night Raw, and he was just incredible. He pulls off moves that really come off as beautiful, I think, and the way he executes them, the way he executes his moves, like that clothesline he done to Daniel Bryan, was absolutely incredible. And what happened was, at the end, we see the locker room coming out after the match and getting up on the Shield. Randy Orton slithers away out of the ring, and it was an all-out brawl. And the fans just went absolutely nuts. And what I like is that it's not a one-person deal where someone comes out and, becomes the hero of taking out the Shield and stepping up, because that one guy would probably get fired by Triple H. So I like that, how everyone comes into one. We see the locker room come out and just, destroy the Shield and have Daniel Bryan get the last word on Seth Rollins, and then hoisting Daniel Bryan up on the shoulders of the good guys and just doing that all night. The audience, I'd never seen the audience so riled up like that. I think by far that was probably the best reaction I've seen in a long time from the crowd, especially in a place like Cleveland. And with that being said, I think last night's Raw really made up for the pay-per-view Night of Champs, because that just felt like a glorified episode of Raw. So I think last night's Monday Night Raw in Cleveland, Ohio, the way it ended was absolutely amazing. The crowd was really into it. The superstars that came out in the locker room were absolutely incredible. And here's also the interesting thing. We see Dolph Ziggler and RVD. These are the guys, I think will probably get penalized for what will probably happen. There's going to be repercussions as to what transpired last night on Raw, no doubt. It's going to happen. And I think that, Dolph Ziggler and RVD, those top two guys are probably get the brunt of it. And we also see other guys like the number one contenders now, the Usos, and as well as Justin Gabriel, who I thought was pretty interesting to see, of all people, come out and help Daniel Bryan, because I think, pulling up Justin Gabriel now, he needs that push, and for that reason, Raw, excellent ending. The audience was just so into that, and all I gotta say is yes, yes, yes. That is how you end Raw, and that was my review for the MRB Wrestling Review Show. I'm your co-host, Mike McRock Wilson, and all I gotta say was, man, what an incredible show. Like I said, it made up for Night of Champions, and I hope this does continue. Get plenty of rest, people, and always do your best.